Yes. And if the person is MIA and you're not here, then I can try to write. There we go. Good. All right. Dr. Sam, whenever you are ready.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us live in person. We have a few of you here. I love seeing most smiling faces coming up. And then for all of you who are at home, thank you for being online as well. Now, tonight's topic is super immunity, making sure I didn't read it wrong backwards. Now, with that, it's a great topic, especially in today's world where everyone's concerned about how do I keep myself healthy? And I'm not going to be the one going into details on that. However, I do want to make sure that you're paying attention because during this 30-minute time period, you could learn something very important, or you could walk away being no different at all. And that's a choice that you get to make. My hope and prayer is that you do pay attention and you do get something from this, because the best thing we can do is learn from every moment to see how can we help our body be healthier. And that's the goal I know we all have in common. So thank you for being here, and I'm going to pass the floor over to Dr. Steve.
All right. So Dr. Sam commented on that you have an opportunity to leave the same or leave different. Who loves wasting time? Anybody? So we all want to get something out of being here. And one of our promises, whether it's something we're doing in the office like we do every single Tuesday night, or if it's one of our community workshops that we do, ideally I'm out doing that once or twice a month. It's been a little hard recently, but I'm committed to doing that. So as an early on ask, if you know of a place who could utilize conversations like this, let me know. I do those as a community service. I don't even charge for my time to do it. But the conversation of super immunity is incredibly important. Somebody's making notes on my screen. Because not just because of the time we're in, but if we want to talk about super immunity, really where we should start is how do we find ourselves not having super immunity? Because if we can, for the most part, agree on the worldview that we were created to thrive, then how would we not always have super immunity? And I could give you the answer, and if you get to be in person with me, and maybe at home I'll turn the volume up in a minute, but I don't want to give you the answer. I want you to direct where we're going to go tonight. So this board and Dr. Sam's awesome wife with neater handwriting than I and Dr. Sam is going to put your answer. So what are ways that you think you could find yourself in a compromised immunity? If I got to give you a couple of leads, I can do that.
Lack of sleep.
Lack of sleep. It's a good one.
Your diet.
Diet.
Lack of exercise.
Lack of exercise.
If you have other diseases.
So other underlying issues.
Right, there you go.
Maybe genetic or hereditary or something like that. What do you got? Not going to get checked up when you should. Okay. But for you, something you think of.
Popped up my initially. I'm gonna say something along that. Have some central nervous system. I got a feeling you're going that direction.
Maybe. So you would say subluxation.
Yes.
Yes.
Subluxation.
She's married to a chiropractor. That's what I spell that.
Don't
How about
give
for
me
you
too
guys?
much credit.
Comes to mind. Pregnancy. That could be something that could challenge immunity. Does anybody love when tax time is? Right? That could be something that could challenge our immunity. Has everybody ever had a deadline? You have to write stress. Yeah, there we go. Ever had a deadline at work or something like that, and it felt like you were kind of getting beat up because you weren't really meeting the deadline? Or you ever got a report card? Think back to the days of report cards, unless you're still getting them. And maybe you didn't want to bring said report card home, or you were trying to make like D's into B's or something like that. Anybody ever experienced any of those things in life? So the idea is there's a lot of stuff that could result in challenge immunity. But the bigger idea, and this could be one of the most important conversations we ever have, I think, is that it all comes down to our choices. Because every moment of every day we have choices. We're either making choices that are leading us closer to health or further away from health. There's no in between. We sometimes talk about, any of you ever heard the word homeostasis? Any idea what it means for those of you who say yes?
Saying nothing changes.
Basically that everything is kind of evenly keeled, right? So homeostasis is you're not super healthy, you're not super sick, but there's this idea that we should be seeking homeostasis in our life. And the fact is that doesn't exist. It's like saying that there can ever really truly be 100% balance in all areas of your life between work and family and kids and this. No, it can never. We could seek to achieve that, but it's never going to happen. A cell in the body can't both be in a state of health and a state of disease at the same time. So there is no, I'm just kind of hanging out hoping for the best cell. It's either getting better or it's getting worse. And the choices we make are either, I think, there we go, helping us get better or helping us get worse. So as we dig into superimmunity a little more, the idea of, most of you showed up because of this word, right? There was some kind of pain, there was a problem, an injury maybe. What if that injury, and I don't know when this happened yesterday, but I have this fun little Band-Aid on. I was adjusting people and all of a sudden my hand hurt. And I looked down and someone had something sharp on their clothes. Sliced me right open. So what if all I did was put the Band-Aid on and continue on with my day? What might happen to that? Could get infected. So then what happens when it gets infected? I mean, if it gets really bad, right? I might be like one-armed chiropractor and actually have to do way more adjustments than that. So if we have an injury and we don't clean said injury and we just stick a Band-Aid on it, then the body is going to either way release inflammation. So that inflammation is a response from the body to attempt to create healing. So I had pain to say, hey, you have a cut on your hand. Otherwise, I would have never known it was there. And I stopped what I was doing. I walked in the bathroom. I scrubbed that puppy out because I didn't know where it came from. And then I put a Band-Aid on and continued on with my day. But what if I just stuck the Band-Aid on or maybe ignored it altogether, which would have been really terrible since I used these hands on you guys all day. I'm never going to do that to you. And that inflammation happened and I just left it sitting. Maybe my hand doesn't get cut off. I hope. I could get sick. I could get like sepsis, like an infection of my blood. Like this stuff can happen. It reminds me of a story. We're going to cut off Facebook. So sorry you don't get to hear my life stories. There we go. It was actually my brother-in-law a bunch of years ago was in a motorcycle accident. So a car pulled out in front of him. He was launched from his motorcycle. He went across the intersection, landed on the other side, got all cut up. Ultimately, he's okay. And when we showed up at the hospital, because I'm curious about these things, my wife and I wanted to say, well, let's take a look at your wounds because he was saying how much they hurt. Well, said hospital bandaged said wounds with road in them. That's a bad idea. Like how they thought that was a good idea, I don't know. But they didn't bother to properly clean it. There was stuff from the road in his arm and they just bandaged it up. Clearly that could lead to some significant sickness, more pain. We get this cycle of inflammation in the body. So one of the ideas to walk away with is lack of immunity or lack of health is a result of inflammation. Inflammation by itself is a really good thing. But when it sticks around for a long time, it's not a good thing. So as soon as I washed this little wound out and bandaged it up, the inflammatory, I can't speak tonight, inflammatory, there we go, response of my body decreased because there's no longer an invader that didn't belong there. It was now a clean area. And we have a problem in our world. And we talked about this last week in our prescribed epidemic workshop. So who was there for that or got to be part of it? A couple of you, awesome. Is in our world, we have an issue of chronic pain. And really it's an issue of chronic disease. And I say our world, I just mean this little spot and then, you know, the Alaska that hangs out over there somewhere in Hawaii too. But we have chronic diseases. If we take all of the people in the United States who have the chronic disease of heart disease, the chronic disease of cancer, the chronic disease of diabetes, assuming it's not type 1, that is not equal to the number of people who live every single day in chronic pain. And remember, pain results in what in the body? Inflammation, yes. So if there's no inflammation, there is no pain. There has to be an inflammatory response. But when inflammation sticks around for a long time is when we really start to run into trouble. Because our body was created to have an instantaneous response to that invader, that cut, that wound, that twisted ankle, rush everything it needs to heal it, and go away. But what do we tend to do in our nation when we have pain? What do we do to it?
First of all,
we brush it off, we power through, we drug it away. Does that actually do a whole lot to change the inflammatory response inside the body? No. So then we end up with 30% of our population living in chronic pain every single day. And we went into detail with that last week, so we're not going to do it tonight. But another idea to come away with is the cycle happens another way to look at it. Is when we have that first invader into the body. It could be a cut, it could be a twisted ankle, it could be a bug bite, anything you can think of. It could be your lack of sleep, lack of proper diet, all the things you listed on there. then the body launches an attack to respond to that. That attack is, again, it's that, help me out, what is it called? It's that I word, thank you, inflammation. You get extra tickets. You're the guest and you're helping me out. So that inflammation, then the body, let's call it flu, because maybe the C word is a little big of a topic at the moment. But any disease on the planet, how about that? Let's just pretend it's a bacterial or a viral infection. Then the body produces antibodies. So the immune system actually creates cells to fend off against this thing. So there are many different kinds of cells in the immune response. We'll talk about those in other workshops. Some of our scientists are reporting on them. Some of them kind of forgot that like memory cells exist in the immune system. And when you have a immunity to something, it lasts for more than like a couple of days. Like there's other ones that go away in a couple of days, but they somehow forgot about this for the first like 8 or 10 months of coronavirus. And now they remember that memory T cells exist. And anyway, I'm getting off topic. So antibodies are produced, redness, swelling, heat, pain. I picked red for a reason. I just picked that a little reminder of inflammation. And then we have this cycle of inflammation again. If we assess the problem, remove the problem, the inflammation cycle stops. So as you mentioned, maybe I was going for the word subluxation. What I love about opening workshops this way is I don't have any intention of where we're going. I want to go where you want to go. Because remember, if I just sit here and I talk at you the whole time, we don't involve you in the process, then you could very easily leave no greater than you showed up. But if you put something on the board, you now have a personal stake in the conversation, and you're going to get a heck of a lot more out of it. So another way to look at it, ooh, look, I have help. I don't need help. Is your body's reaction to stress. It alerts the body and responds with invaders. And this is a slide I wanted to jump to. So remember, short-term inflammation we can think of as good. Long-term inflammation we can think of as maybe bad is a little harsh, but we'll call it bad to overall health. Because the body has very intelligent responses to all things. And short-term inflammation is how it's designed. Just like if we were to talk about stress, our body is incredibly well equipped to deal with stress short-term. But again, what do we do in our culture? Ignore it. We ignore it. We pile it on more. You know, we think about like, it's supposed to be like the happiest time of year right now, right? Does anybody? All right. Oh, I cut off Facebook. I don't even have to say it, right? Like your giggle was there, right? So it's supposed to be the happiest time of year, but how is your stress level as a parent right now? It's going way up.
Every day gets higher and higher.
Every day is higher and higher. And this time of year is also known as something, it's a season. It's a 3-letter word that starts with F, ends with U. Anybody got that for me? Flu season. I realized that's why I said starts with, ends with. I wanted to see where you guys are at. So they call it flu season, right? Really what this is we're in a season of heightened stress, increased sugar, terrible diets, lack of exercise, and we wonder why we get sick more often. Or exactly what we're talking about is how you end up with compromised immunity. Is this is the time of year we put a little bit more effort into most of these things on here and don't even think about. So if we were to maybe cut out some of the sugars that we might be eating, if we're getting a little bit more rest, if we're taking the fact that maybe you didn't get the Black Friday or Cyber Monday deal you were seeking because somebody else got it before you, that we realize it's just a moment in time. It's really not all that important in the grand scheme of things, because the short-term version of inflammation, it's okay. Your body is set up for success with that. The long-term is the problem. And maybe this, as we talked about in the very beginning, maybe this is one of those transition points and the most important conversations we can ever have, because most of our planet does this. They sit over here, they live over here, they pour their time, energy, and effort into covering up the problem or covering up the symptom and just continuing on. We have an entire industry. It's not the greatest. It's the most abundant financial industry on the planet. And it's all right here. It's the pharmaceutical industry. And this is not a conspiracy thing or any of that stuff. It's the fact is the pharmaceutical company's job, well, one of their jobs, is to produce things to deal with chronic diseases. And if you ever get a chance to like dig into some of the notes, like the board meetings, the things, their real job is to make money for the investors, right? But if they create things that help us maintain or feel okay here that we now require for life, they get to make a heck of a lot more money. And again, not the conversation tonight, so I'm veering off a little bit, but the United States, we spend 2.5 times more than every other developed nation on the planet on healthcare. We take, I think it's like 80%. Last time I checked, it's 80 or 85% of all the drugs on the planet are taken right here, and we make up like 5.4% of the population. And our health standards compared to the rest of the world, we're ranked like number 49 out of other developed nations. There's not that many more than 49 developed nations. There are third world countries that have better health outcomes than we have. So clearly there's something wrong. And I'm not saying that that means that every single person should be in a chiropractic office getting adjusted. Is that a good idea? Probably. We all have spines. We should at least get them checked. But if we can just help us transition out of this idea of long-term health challenges are normal and chronic disease is normal because it's so darn common, and if we can find and make different decisions and shorten that process, then we can have a much different outcome for health, and we can really truly experience super immunity. Because everything on this list is all a result of inflammation. Every disease process in the body is a result of inflammation. Some of them may have show up a different way, but it's all long-term inflammation, plain and simple. So the way you get super immunity is you make choices that decrease the body's inflammatory load. And maybe it's clean up your diet. Maybe it's go to bed a little earlier. Maybe it's you don't even put your phone in your room. Like you leave it in a different room of the house. Like it's okay. You can do it. You're going to still wake up the next day. Maybe we're going to get up and we're going to exercise. Exercise, literally based on the research, is all you have to do is go for a walk for something like 30 minutes. They used to say 3, they now say 5 days a week because also in the time of Corona, we've become a more obese nation than ever before with more diseases that are considered the comorbidities that are the reason why the people who have significant challenges with this or any other disease, like they've all grown in this time. I don't see that conversation a whole lot about what we should be doing differently related to that stuff. Maybe we, like I said, maybe you don't go to the doctor. I had a friend of mine, he had COVID. He had tons of the comorbidities related to that. He was a chiropractor, so he, I'm assuming, believed that he was just going to get over it and get better. And when we had conversations with him in our coaching company about basically you need to go now, he chose to not do that. Well, he made choices, and I'm not judging, I'm just sharing a story of when he finally decided to go to the hospital, he didn't make it down the stairs to his 18-year-old son waiting in the car. That's not okay. That's a choice from someone who knew a lot of stuff to do right. That was a choice that wasn't going on time when there's a time and place for this stuff. When I say the pharmaceutical industry's job is to make their people money and to really treat chronic diseases, it's simply how it works. I'm not anti anything. I'm pro the one thing is that the power that made your body heals your body. And if we can make more choices that build up the respect the design of our body, then we get to live in a lot healthier place, because everything contributes to chronic disease and sickness is all the bad choices. And I don't say I make all good choices. I definitely ate some more pie than I should have at Thanksgiving and probably some more food than I should have, right? But if we make more good choices than bad choices, and it's one of the reasons why one of the requirements of care in this office is you got to show up to workshops, because there is no possible way in the few minute conversations we get to have in the individual days, or even a couple of workshops in 30 minutes along the way, that we can possibly touch on all of the topics that may be things to help you learn to make better choices. Because if you don't know better, you simply can't do better. And if people knew what we knew, they would do what we do, right? One of the things we always ask is for you to share your own story with people, because the vast majority of the planet doesn't know that regular, consistent chiropractic care, getting your spine and nervous system checked and properly adjusted to work, be its best, is incredibly important. They just simply don't know that. One of our financial CA, Tori, her stepmom, she was telling me this story yesterday. She's all over social media complaining about how bad her spine is and how bad everything is. And she's like, well, you know, I kind of work at a place where they're pretty good at what they do, right? She goes, oh, that won't work for me. So why? Well, I don't want somebody pushing on my back. So she made a choice to stay in chronic pain every single day without ever seeing if this was a possibility. When we get to immunity, I want to make sure we have time to talk about one of the research articles, because I'm always going to stick research in there so you don't think I'm just up here sharing my opinion, although I think it's pretty good. But so this is directly related to our immune system and how our body works. So what they did is they did a study, and this was done at New York University. It was done in the New York Preventative Medicine Institute of New York University. And what they looked at is individuals with cancer, individuals without cancer, and individuals under chiropractic care, long-term chiropractic care. If I'm remembering this study right, I think long-term in this version was 5 months, although there's other versions where they go to like 5 years. And we've talked about that in other workshops about how people under regular chiropractic care save like 61% on their healthcare costs compared to those who don't go. But what this shows is this is someone with cancer or other serious disease. So those chronic diseases that we talked about, like even chronic pain go on this list, heart disease, cancer, diabetes. They had an immune system that functioned at the lower level. The average person walking around in the public had an immune system that functioned 200% greater than someone who had a serious health challenge. So we're kind of following the math on that. If we have a serious health challenge like a cancer or something of the sort, then our immune system functions 200% less than if we're a relatively healthy person, not necessarily symptom-free, but we don't have a major issue like a cancer or heart disease that we know of. And then what they did is they also looked at individuals that received long-term chiropractic care. So can somebody read that number for me? 400% greater. So if we really want to change our own lives, if we want to change the lives of our families, we want to change our community, maybe our zip code or even greater than that, then this is a conversation we should be having at the time of year, especially when our stress level is worse every single day and we're doing more of the things that are getting us out of maybe our healthier routines. Because people who get adjusted have a 400% higher immune system function than people who don't with serious disease. They have a 200% higher function than those who are already relatively healthy. So if we want to achieve super immunity, absolutely we have to work on our choices. But if we really, really want to get there, the research speaks for itself. Chiropractic is one of the most researched healthcare professions on the planet. We don't exist because pharmaceutical companies are throwing money at us to determine new ways to adjust people. We don't exist because our health insurance is trying to find ways to cover more chiropractic. In fact, they always try to cover less chiropractic. They did a study in Canada a bunch of years ago where they have socialized medicine. And they said, hey, should we fund chiropractic or should we not? So they hired one of the top researchers in Canada who had never been to a chiropractor before, so he didn't have a bias of it. And what he did in his research, and when he came back, is he said, actually, what I found is you should defund everything else, fully fund chiropractic, and we would save trillions of dollars on healthcare for the country of Canada. Guess what the country of Canada did? Cut chiropractic. Every chiropractor there, they have to now fight the battle of everything else is paid for completely, and if you want to see chiropractic, you've got to come out of pocket. Even though the research said something very different. We're still here because it works. Because people who utilize chiropractic care the way it was designed, which is not you show up to feel a little better and you disappear, you actually invest in learning how to make better choices. They are neighbors and you are neighbors of your neighbors who live at a 400% greater health or 400% higher level of super immunity than people walking around that percent of the population, whether it's the 30% with chronic pain or the other 30% that have heart disease, cancer, diabetes. So that easily puts you at something like 60%, realizing there's probably some overlap in there. You have a 400% greater super immunity than like 60% of the population. Is because you make one choice. Your choice is you get adjusted. That doesn't even mean that we did any of the things we spent the vast majority of our time tonight talking about. That we clean up our sleep, our diet, we exercise. Genetic, by the way, it makes up less than 2% of all diseases on the planet. Epigenetics, which we have an entire conversation about, states that we can actually choose by our lifestyle choices what genes get turned on and get turned off. So just because, for example, you may have the gene for breast cancer doesn't mean you're going to have breast cancer. That gene has to be turned on and have a chronic turning on of that gene for breast cancer to ever show up. Or any other genetic disease that's there, the gene actually has to get turned on first. And it gets turned on by putting your body in a stressful environment for a long time. So another way to look at some of the choices we can make to clean that up is, of course, we should get our spine checked. I don't just say like some chiropractor, that's the research that we just put out. If we look at the vital needs of the body, we know we have to have food. We can live weeks without food. We know we have to have water. We know we have to have air. We know we have to have nervous system function. And if we put those same things on this pyramid over here, the most profound one of all of those is your nervous system function. If you show up to a scene of an accident and you have skill sets in helping in that scene of the accident, do you care what the person had for breakfast? No. Do you care if they had lots of water that day? No. Do you see if they're breathing? That could be a good idea. And then if they're not breathing, you're going to look for some kind of stimulation. You're probably going to rub on their sternum with your knuckles because it's a very pain sensitive spot, and it's going to be a nervous system stimulation. So the most profound thing you can do for your health is make sure you have a healthy functioning nervous system. So we start with getting your spine and nervous system checked. That doesn't mean adjusted. That doesn't mean you need a care plan. That doesn't mean you're going to get a table. It's just simply get checked to find out. Then we also have to do other things like if we don't smoke, we drink in moderation. If we're going to drink, we have diets high in fruit and vegetables. We reduce our sugar. I think it was 3 weeks ago, we talked about how these two things alone increase our lifespan by like 14 years. And then if we reduce our stress, increase our exercise, and get adequate sleep. I didn't plan that, but that looks pretty much like that, doesn't it? Right? So that's also why I love doing that, is because we're all living in the same world. We all deal with the same stuff. The difference is you are now better equipped to make better choices. Because if you don't know better, you can't do better. So one of my asks of you always is to not keep any information we share for yourself. Because if we, and this is like the time of year, it's not about presents, but like we're probably seeking like to have some presents, right? Right. So a present, or a gift, we should call it instead, is only a gift if you keep giving it. So you all have a gift of a higher level of knowledge about how your body works and things you can do to increase, to achieve super immunity than most of the people you know in your lives. And there is no possible way I could ever reach as many people as just those sitting in the room or those at home could reach. It's just not possible. So one of my asks of you is to share the information. It is not to get more people here. It is to get more information out. Because if more people knew how to make better choices, then we wouldn't be living in a nation that 30% of it deals with chronic pain every day, that another 30% has major chronic diseases that are the top causes of death every single year. We would be living in a nation of people who know how to make better choices, are actually motivated to make those choices consistently, and get to experience super immunity and really the life we're designed to have. So my two asks of you tonight, does anyone remember the one that I started with? There's a good skill set if you're ever speaking anywhere. Share, yeah. So one of them is to share. The other one is specifically with groups you may know. Because one of the things I'm really investing my time getting back into is I used to be out on the street 1, 2, 3, 4 times a month doing 20, 30-minute conversations for groups of people. Maybe it's your book club, maybe it's the church you go to, maybe it's your work, maybe it's, who knows, whatever you're into. Those are people, if you're spending time with them, they deserve to know more about how to be healthy. And whether any of them ever show up here or not does not matter to me. What matters to me is that we put the information out. So my asks, and Dr. Sam's going to help me out on this, is either where's the group we need to go to, or who is the person you're going to share with. I don't want their social security number, their phone number, their address, just their first name. So last week I started on this side of the room, so I'm coming back to you this week. What do you got for me? You can say the same person as last week. That's okay.
I probably do my mom also. People on my job, a lot of do a lot out for a shipyard. So a lot of old people there are always complaining about pains.
They just keep on doing what they're doing and keep being broken down and not at some different shipyard. Your mom's first name? Barb. Comes to mind for you? Who comes to mind for you?
My mom. I'm actually going to share with my friends.
Awesome. Right, they're important enough to spend time with. They're important enough to share information. Like, it sounds a little funny, but seriously, if we're going to invest our time with these people, then we might as well help them be around longer and be healthier. How about for you guys? Mother-in-law Mary. You gonna say your mom too?
Yeah.
I mean, you were gonna say no. You were gonna say no. Ooh, who do you got? I saw that. That was not your mother-in-law.
I was thinking you were gonna call on me separate from her, so I think we don't answer anyway. I'll probably talk about it at work tomorrow.
Well, my coworkers hear me all the time talking about it in my family, but one of my chiropractors.
And most of your family's here, right?
Yes. Fortunate, but I would have 2 coworkers that I would be willing to interact with. They know I go, but
And maybe coming in and doing a talk for you. Maybe like a sample, because I know you are in a big company. Maybe like a dozen people sample group or something like that.
Maybe I could look into like school athletes. I don't know.
Yeah, the only thing I need is help to have like a foot in the door. Like, I don't need anything else. I mean, if it's like a company or a business or a school, it's the name of the HR director. That's it. I don't want you to do any of the work for me. I want to do it all myself. Not because I want to do more work, but it wouldn't really be fair to be like, hey, you have a company you want me to go to, do all the setup, and I'm just going to walk in the door. No, I'm going to establish a relationship and help them understand the importance of what we do. And then I'm really just coming to serve them and get nothing from them. So everybody have a wonderful evening and see some of you tomorrow. And I'll put that survey up if you were at home. I did not forget about you.
Loki, he did.
Oh, that's rude. I did not. I was looking at you guys the whole time.
You're cute.
You say your mom's already here.